Hey, in this video I want to talk about Google Analytics, more specifically GA4 versus the well-known Universal Analytics, the one that we are all very much used to. Why bother? I have already made a few videos on this channel on how to install GA4, how to install Universal Analytics, but the big news is that Universal Analytics will only work until somewhere next year, 2023, so everyone has to switch, like it or not. The way we're used to do our reporting, that's just not going to work anymore. So how do we proceed after that? The only way to do is to use GA4, and Google was pushing for that. So whenever a new property was created, Google was actually pushing towards creating also the GA4 property, at least as an addition, or maybe even to replace the Universal Analytics property. I want to explain what the difference is because I think it might be hard to grasp for those who are just starting out with web analytics. Maybe it would be good if you haven't seen Universal Analytics and haven't been using it for the last 10 years. But the difference is quite big. So at first, when you just see the interface, it feels like you don't really have as much control over what you have. So in GA Universal Analytics, many things were around like where the user comes from, what is their journey, how many users are repeat users, how many users are bouncing, what percentage of those type of reporting. And this is something that is not just looks not available in GA4. GA4 looks completely different. You see some events, active users, some engagement metrics, but that is way different, and it feels like GA4 gives you less, while in some cases you may say so. The main argument about the switch between the platforms is that third-party cookies are going away, and there's nothing we can do about it. We have to learn to live in the world where third-party cookies cannot be used the way they were used before, and you cannot simply match the user or mark the user with a cookie and then expect this cookie to be there forever or like for a reasonably long time to actually keep the user journey between the flow. So this is my understanding of the main switch between GA4 and Universal Analytics. So first of all, it's important to point out what was the focus of the platform, like one platform and the other, and that would possibly give a clear understanding why the interface is also like differs that much. So Universal Analytics, the old GA, was collecting the data in a very much e-commerce centric way. I think you may say. So you would have page views as the main metric that you would follow with. So page views of your website, and then in addition to page views, you would have events and you would have transactions. This is how everything was collected in Universal Analytics, and that is like, and Universal Analytics heavily uses cookies to actually understand that the user is returning to the website or if it's a new user, which is something that you cannot actually tell for sure when the cookies are not there anymore. And GA4 is very different because in GA4 everything is an event, and this is basically it. A session start is an event, a view of the page would be just as an event, a conversion or a button click or whatever would be an event. And then out of these events you can actually construct your flow on the site. So coming from understanding where the users come from and how they keep coming back to the site, the focus is switching towards what does the user actually do, and towards more flexible formats in the way that it's not just an order that happens on the website, but it can be many events that are relevant for today. Like a newsletter subscription could be an event, which would be a conversion. Any like button click, creating a lead, let's say sending a type form response or booking a Calendly event. These can be just JavaScript events that can be translated into regular events in GA4 that would be collected. So that's why, because of this difference, you would not have the same metrics that you would see in both. So it doesn't really make sense to specifically compare what you would see in GA4 versus Universal Analytics. Of course, there's some just web tracking discrepancy, but there's also just the difference in the logic, like how things are being collected in the platform. So if in Universal Analytics you would have a session that would be that would have like typically a 30-minute timeout, and then if you would have some UTM parameters in an internal link or something, the session would break and you would see a new session of returning users. In GA4 you would have just a session start that would be an event of session start, and then you would not have this kind of break of a session, because you're not looking at sessions, so you're more looking at just the number of active users, which can be different from the users that you would see in Universal Analytics. And then you would see a lot of events for these users. So, and because of that, you would not see, in Universal Analytics, you would not see detailed reporting on the events. But in GA4, you would be missing actually the reporting on search, medium, campaign, like all this deep structure of like where the user comes from. You would not see the user flows in how do they return to the website, because this is something that would be very hard to compare. And this is something that without the cookies, it would break so often that the metrics would actually be just not accurate. And if you cannot tell for sure that this user is returning to the site, then maybe that's not exactly the metric that you would want to look at. So the users are different, the user journeys would be different, the engagement metrics would be different, because in Universal Analytics we're used to seeing bounce rate, which you can argue Universal Analytics would have bounce rate, which is, well, questionable how much you actually needed that, but this metric can actually be manipulated, because if the user has any kind of interaction with the page, there would be zero bounce rate, and then even like technical interaction with the page, while GA4 reports actually what is called like engagement. So it's kind of the other way around, but it's different, which is like you cannot compare that. It's not the reverse metric. It's just a different metric that we will need to be to get used to. And the last point, which is quite exciting if you're technical at least, or like as technical as me, let's say. So GA4 allows you to export into BigQuery. So you can actually get all of your events, like all of your data, into BigQuery in a database that you can process however you like. And that is important because you can decide like how do you actually define some of the metrics, some of the user journeys that might be very specific for you. That just gives the flexibility you would need. So in GA4, there is a report that would show you some events, like how many events you have. For a simplistic website where you have a somewhat simple conversion, like some subscription or some purchase, like something that is like a kind of a one-step conversion, you can just view that on a simple report, and you don't really need to have like more complex funnels, because like if you're just fighting for like a simple metric, you can quickly look at that for that in the interface. But if you want to build anything more specific, there is just a vast opportunity to do that with BigQuery, with just using the database and shaping the data however you like. This does have a steeper learning curve for sure, because it looks like the reports you're getting are just worse than in Universal Analytics, and then you need to try and shape them into how you actually want to use them. But then the results would actually be great. So it is totally worth it. Do I like GA4 compared to Universal Analytics? I'm not entirely sure. For the websites that I'm looking after, I prefer to have actually both Universal Analytics and GA4, just because, but that is probably because I have been using Universal Analytics since 2012. But on the other hand, we don't have a choice, so we have to move on, and we have to say goodbye to Universal Analytics. So if you haven't installed GA4, just do that. I recommend using GTM for that, because you can specify all the custom events, and then you would just get like a lot of raw data of every single interaction that you would like to capture, and you can use it. That's about it. That's a short one. Follow our journey on the Shopify app development, and we would actually soon be working on the different types of projects as well as the Shopify app. If that is helpful, then give it a like and subscribe.